Hey, everybody, you got me?
We got you, Jerry.
Gotcha, Jerry.
Got me? All good?
Yep. I think we're ready to get started.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining in tonight. I'm not going to go through the whole Trout Club spiel or anything like that tonight. We've got, I think, a lot of people that know about the club. Just leave it that the biggest thing we have going on right now is the fly fishing film tour coming up on March 5th. And then this year, and you can get tickets from the tour website, flyfilmtour.com. There may be some tickets at the door, just depends on how many they sell in advance. So that's, one of our major fundraisers for the year. If you're in the area and you can support us, please do. So anyhow, apologies for getting started a little late. Technical difficulties, as always, when doing this type of stuff, and especially on an old computer that's slower than I am, it seems like. So anyhow, we'll get going. And this is just an overview of the Trout Club group trip to Cuba last November. And let's get rolling and see what we got. Okay, so we went through an outfitter called Avalon Outdoors, and this whole thing came about in actually September of 2019 when their sales rep in the U.S., Scott Osborne, was just kind of doing a tour around various parts of the country and stopping to talk to the different clubs. They were bringing a new ship online and had some promotional activities going along with it. And Scott gave a great program. And I know a number of us, like myself, Cuba's been on kind of the bucket list of places to go. And this made it quite easy to do. The way he had everything set up. And we were scheduled to go in November of 2020. And then we all know what happened regarding COVID and everything. And that really made it difficult to really try and reschedule things, and nobody knew what was going on. The outfitters, none of them, no matter where they went, knew what to do. So it was kind of just kind of see what goes as, and, through the whole thing, I think Avalon did a really as good a job as they could have done. I know people that went on trips to other locations lost their deposits and never had the trip go or anything like that. So yeah, we did have a few extra fees involved and such. But they put the trip together, and a small group of us, had the opportunity to go this year, and we did that based on a lot of the information that Avalon had given us regarding, vaccinations in Cuba and the way they were taking care of their parties once they got down there. And, we'll talk about some of that here as we go forward. So we actually drove to Toronto in order to do the trip for a couple different reasons. First, it was close by, and really, other than Miami, well, Miami really is the only, maybe Miami and Fort Lauderdale were the only places in the U.S. that you could fly to Havana at this time. And flying into Havana was not necessarily the easiest thing for us to do, because that then entailed a bus ride down to Havana, which Avalon will set up for you, but it does add pretty much an extra day on the trip. So we drove to Toronto, which was an adventure in itself. one of our guys, Mike Mach, who's actually, I think, on watching tonight, was waiting at the border for his COVID test in order to get into Canada. So luckily he was negative. Leave it to say, we had a lot of stress, getting up there, but it finally, we got everybody up there, and we flew down on an airline called Air Transat, which specializes in trips to the Caribbean. And it had like a brand new plane and everything. They took, I mean, it was a great flight. I thought they did a really, really good job for us. So the flight down was, nothing, was very easy. I think, 3.5 hours from Toronto to a place called Kayakoko. And there's the route we took. Kayakoko is a big resort area. It's an island on the north side of Cuba. And it's a big Canadian resort, as well as other Europeans, but Canadians go there a lot. And that, one of the main reasons we got the flight out of Toronto there, but straight shot down. And you can see where the red arrow is, where Kayakoko is. And we essentially pretty much cut north to south across the island, where we'll see to the port of Hokkaido, where the boats are kept. But there was our landing point in Kayakoko. And even at the airport, there's no shortage of reminders about Castro and the revolution and all of that. It's still a big part of the culture there, at least from the government standpoint. And, you see banners and signs and that, in a lot of locations. And cigar smokers, part of the things you see in the airport. And we really, other than going to the airport, we didn't really do much outside because we got there late in the evening. Well, actually at night. And then they drove us across the island. But so some of these photos are going to be in the daytime, and those we took on the way back because we returned during the day. So the trip down and back across the island to the airport, we're going to see in combination here. But at the airport, they had the old cars, and those were taxis that we saw, and we did see a few older cars, when we were driving across the island. Another one there. They say a lot of them, they've put diesel motors into them now, just because of the original motors are just unfixable anymore. They can't get parts for them, or they've just totally worn out. So they've replaced them with diesel motors, but the look is still back into the 50s and such. And there we see the port of Hokkaido, which is on the south side of the island. And that's kind of the gateway to this Jardin de la Reina, which is the Gardens of the Queen, which you can barely see at the bottom of the photo there. And that's the archipelago that we traveled to in order to fish. So, the ride across and back to the airport, nice big air-conditioned bus. We had a kind of like a tour guide translator who did a very good job for us, spoke really good English, and explained kind of the situation as best he could in Cuba at present. So, we're very well taken care of, and they really did a good job as far as keeping everybody safe and isolated as much as they possibly could. And, driving across, you can see a lot of it's totally third world. Not big thing. In fact, other than a few main roads, you know, it was a lot of dirt roads. As you can see, horse carts, old farm machinery. So, the average person down there, is living a pretty simple lifestyle. Even, the apartment buildings and stuff that, we went by, and some of the, what they said were universities and such, pretty run down looking on the outside. But, that's the way it is once you get out of a few major cities, apparently. And ultimately, we ended up at the and this is where the Avalon fleet is. They've got, I don't know, I think 4 or 5 boats that they run, and they use various size boats depending on the size of the group that they have, or how many groups they have and such. And essentially, we went on board, kind of were shown to our rooms and that. Pretty much went to sleep that night, and they started the boat up. I think, yeah, they started a little bit later than we thought they would. They had some, I think, engine troubles and stuff, of course. But they started up, and through the night and early morning is when we traveled out to the Gardens of the Queen. And here's the hallway going down from the main deck, and where those kind of cut-ins are on the sides, those are staterooms. And they were adequate. They certainly weren't super fancy, but they were comfortable, clean, and you're on a boat, so it's not going to be a huge hotel room or anything like that. So you have to keep that in mind. Here is the room I was in, and it was fine. Worked out well. I had plenty of room for myself and my gear. My daughter went on the trip. She was across the hall from me, and had a bathroom and a shower with 120 electricity, so you could charge your phone and things like that without any problems. And the layout of the rooms, a couple of them were a little bit different in that, but I think everybody was comfortable enough for the trip. Again, you're on a boat for a week, so that you're not going to have a whole lot of room, at least where it comes to sleeping quarters. And here's a look back at the Avalon boats there, and that one in the center there is one they just brought online, I think last fall, and I think that's the boat that we're going to be on next January at this point, because we've got a larger group for sure, and I think that's where we're going to end up. And so we leave the port of Picardo up top there, and there you can see the Gardens of the Queen archipelago there. And the primary destination is where you see that Avalon logo there. And I'm not quite sure how far we traveled throughout the course of the week, but we moved several times during the week, and I'm sure they've got kind of a general routine that they follow as far as locations and such. They put you in a sheltered area so you're not out in the wind or anything like that when they're anchored up. So they do everything they can to make things as comfortable as they can for you. And next morning before we went out fishing, of course, you get the whole, introduction on the whole program, how things are going to work during the week. You get a kind of a lesson about the national park system in Cuba and the Gardens of the Queen in particular. We did travel with I think a humanitarian visa. So Avalon sets all that up. They have all that paperwork and everything assigned to you. So, I mean, this is totally legal. This is not sneaking in or anything like that. So you've got all the documentation that you need if you need to show it or discuss it going in and out of the U.S. So, you're very careful that we're not doing something that, could, potentially cause problems down the road. And that young lady there is Tanya, who was kind of our primary host for the week, spoke very good English, and did the communication with the crew and everyone. There was probably half a dozen crew people on board. The captain, several people in the engine room, several other, workers that did various things. And they had a doctor on board. And again, as part of the whole COVID protection thing, he checked everybody's temperatures every morning, made sure everybody, was, didn't have a fever or anything. And then actually in the latter part of the week, they did COVID tests, which they sent back to the mainland to get analyzed. And we needed those actually to get back into Canada on the way back. So there was, quite a bit of logistics involved from that side of things. And luckily everything worked out fine for everyone. And it's just kind of a board with the guide assignments. In that, again, we had a pretty small group on this trip, but and we had one other fella from Germany that had been down there on another trip and decided to stay an extra week. Ralph, and he was a fun guy too. So, it was a fun group. We had a good time. The guides were all very competent. Some spoke English better than others for sure. They knew enough English to communicate. So there really weren't any major problems from that standpoint, at least that I heard or I'm not aware of any anyhow. And everybody seemed happy with the guides they had. We, for the most part, stuck with the same guides all week long, but a couple of the guys, switch back and forth amongst the groups and stuff just to, fish with different people throughout the week. And the typical day, obviously, we start off in the morning, and everybody's usually up, I don't know, 6:30, something like that. They'd have coffee going by 7, and somewhere around 7:15, 7:30, we'd have breakfast and, a lot of food, boy, various types of meats and stuff for breakfast with different types of fresh fruits and things. And you see, I think that's guava or papaya juice on the table there. Lots of coffee. If you wanted eggs and sausage, eggs and potatoes, they'd cook that for you. Toast and that. So there's plenty of food for breakfast. And then before you went out, they gave everybody a dish there, and they had kind of a buffet of things laid out that you would just kind of pick your own lunch, and there'd be, fruit, some vegetables, hard-boiled eggs, chicken, couple types of fish, rice, and that, and you just kind of fill your bowl up and take it down on the boat with you. The boats, they loaded with water and beer, so you had plenty to drink when you're out fishing. Don't want to get dehydrated. So you do that, and the guides would be waiting for you. The boats were very nice, clean. I didn't hear of any major engine problems during the week. They seemed to be well maintained. One of the nice things about those boats is that leaning bar that you see on the front there when you're up on the bow standing. Uh, Comes in very, very handy, especially if you're a little older and you got some back or leg problems, and that really helps stabilize things, makes it much more comfortable. And you head off to your fishing areas. And during the course of the day, you may or may not see some of the other boats. There were times in the morning everybody kind of start off in the same area and then spread out as the day went on. And there was, several of days, we didn't see another boat all day long, just, the boat that we were on. And, as far as equipment, 8, 9, or 10 weight outfit, floating line will get you by. And those are kind of some of the flies that I use there. Those 3 top ones, I caught tarpon on all of those. They're like cockroach type variations, and then like a toad type variation. And then for bonefish in the middle, snapping shrimp, gotcha type variations, tan and pink, tan and orange. They were, those caught the bonefish well. And then on the bottom was stuff that we had rigged up for permit, a big snapping shrimp, and then on the left, the infamous Avalon fly, which actually does work. And in the morning, we usually made, like I said, often the boats were together a little bit, but we'd usually make a stop for tarpon. And I think part of that was because the sun really wasn't up high yet, for sight fishing or anything. So there was a couple places you'd stop, throw flies into the mangroves, or if you saw rolling fish, cast to them. There's Mark Altieri on his first tarpon. He doesn't look very happy about that. I'm not quite sure why, but I didn't really ask him. But anyhow, I think that was Mark's first tarpon. And the tarpon that we caught were, in this 10 to 20, 25 pound range. The big migratory fish are really not there till the spring. So this is season to a certain extent, depending on what you want to do. But through the course of the week, though, we did catch a dozen different species of fish on flies. So, I mean, certainly can't complain about that. And from standpoint of, just variation and overall shallow water, saltwater fly fishing, probably the best that I've ever experienced, at least the variety of things that were available close by, and the different things that you had an opportunity to catch. And from there, after the session of tarpon fishing in the morning, you'd go out and start working the shallow water, the flats and stuff, looking for bonefish. And we had a couple of the days pretty lousy sight fishing weather, cloudy and windy. So you just had to make the best of it that you could. I think some of the guys spent a little more time tarpon fishing, throwing into the mangroves than others just because of this. But they were still able to locate, plenty of bonefish really in spite of tough conditions. So, we still caught plenty of fish in spite of the weather. And that was kind of the typical fish, 2 to 3 pounds, 3 pounds, maybe a little over. Nice, typical from what I've seen around the Bahamas when I've been there, average size, bigger than Belize or Mexico from at least my experience. So it was good fishing, and it was a combination of small groups, some single fish, big schools, some tailing fish, some fish in deeper areas and that. So you kind of had the typical mix of bone fishing opportunities. There's another shot there, my daughter Christy. Actually, did have some sunny, fairly calm weather too. And there were, flats tight up against some of the islands, and then, in flats off channels in between the islands and that. So you fished a variety of places. Some were turtle grass, others were hard white sand like this. So again, you had a whole assortment of different bonefish opportunities for sure. And midday would be a lunch break, and get your lunch out and just kind of pull into the shade somewhere and try and figure out what you're going to do for the afternoon. And again, the weather conditions really dictate a lot of what you're able to do. And also the tide conditions, depending on sunlight and various things, depending on, based on what you want to try and catch. And it was funny, most of the lunch locations had an iguana or two that would scurry out of the bushes as soon as you pulled up. I'm sure they were used to getting fed and stuff and conditioned to coming in or coming out when they heard the boat motors. And we also saw, our guide called them Marsh Rats. I don't know if they were like a nutria, something like that. Looked like a giant muskrat. Saw them crawling around in the bushes at times too. And again, this is a national park, and we did go by, I guess this is the main park office, or at least it's the biologic station on one of the islands here, and Mark and Ted went in to check it out. And we did see a lot of wildlife, tons of bird life. Now this area here, the mangroves here got all chewed up and destroyed during a hurricane a few years ago. So we did get into some areas of this that were kind of just nasty looking, just from the hurricane that had gone through and killed everything, and it'll slowly grow back. There's an osprey nest there with an osprey up in the tree there in the center. We saw flamingos and roseate spoonbills, and all kinds of other smaller birds and that, of which I can't tell you what they were. Frigate birds there, and they would actually circle over schools of bait quite a bit, and you'd often find jacks in particular underneath the frigate birds. The jacks would be in there chasing bait, and the frigate birds would be chasing on the bait. So ran into that a few times. Saw tons of rays. I think there's at least 4 different rays in that photo there, maybe a few more. And, they kind of change color depending on what bottom they're on. You can see that white one that just moved on to the dark bottom there from the boat spooking it, and that dark one in the middle on the light bottom. And I guess they change color after a certain period of time. At least that's what it seemed like to me. And we did see crocodiles a couple times, saltwater crocs. So they're fairly abundant down in that area also. I've seen them in Belize too. And did see a few other boats in the whole process. Obviously nothing too new and modern here. These guys, I believe, were catching lobsters and maybe using them to supply some of the other workers or the people on the at the park office or something. I don't really think there's any amount of commercial activity going on. But back to the fishing, I was surprised at the size of some of the bonefish that we caught. These are like Andros Island, Bahamas size fish. We had several fish up into the 8 to 10 pound range, and possibly a couple a little bigger that were lost, but got a good view of at the boat. So there are some really big bonefish down there, and you can tell the fish here are really unpressured, because there were times you could catch a couple fish out of a school before they totally spooked. So they're not used to having a lot of fishing activity on them, and it was evident, from the way they reacted in some cases. There's another big bonefish Mike had there, and a few more tarpon shots here. And again, that was kind of the typical size. An easy fish to work on a 9 or 10 weight. Fun to catch. You can get them in and not beat the fish up, not beat yourself up either. Another nice fish, a little bit bigger there. And you can see a fair amount of clouds in that picture there. So that's type of conditions that make bone fishing, sight fishing tough, where if you have options where you can throw to, deeper areas around the mangroves, or possibly get in tight to the mangroves and see tarpon and that, you've got that option to help you. This is a blue jack, and Mark is not happy again there. What's going on, Mark? Not quite sure what's going on there. But I think we caught 4 or 5 different kinds of jacks. Well, let's see, yellow jacks, Jack Crevalle, blue jacks, maybe 3 different kinds of jacks. But these are just great fighting fish, and tough to bring in. And we caught quite a few snappers. That's a small mutton snapper there, and they'll hang in the channels. Sometimes they'll move up on the flats, and you'll find them right in with bonefish at times. But actually, that one hit a tarpon fly there, just blind casting. And that's the guide we had for the week. That's Jordy. A really nice young guy. Unfortunately, didn't speak a whole lot of English. Probably the hardest adjustment I had to make was, instead of telling you, that he spotted a fish at, say, 10 o'clock at 60 feet, it was 10 o'clock at 20 meters. So having to make that math adjustment in my head quickly a few times was an interesting experience. They had a little bit bigger mutton snapper, and we kept, some of these bigger ones were kept for food during the week. Very tasty, and great to have fresh fish into the mix. That's a gray snapper. At least that's what I know it as. It's also called a mangrove snapper, and they can get fairly big, but that's kind of an average size one. And there's a nice fish hooked right at the end of the fly line there. Ted's got this one on, and that ended up being a big Jack Crevalle, which I know he probably fought that thing for the better part of a half hour. I know we went by him a couple times, and he was on the bow fighting it. So again, another big advantage for our up on the front of the boat there. And, we were not fortunate enough to get into permit during the week. The good sighting conditions and tides really did not coincide too well for us that week. I tried it for a while, got a couple casts at one big fish, and just a quick look at a couple other ones. So we did not connect with permit, but this is about a month ago. The folks from Katmai Trophy Lodge in Alaska, where I go, they were down there with a group, and they did get a couple big permit during the course of the week. So, legit chance to get a grand slam there. If you fish permit at all, that there are probably the definitely one of the hardest fish to catch on a fly, and everything's got to kind of go the right way in order for it to happen. But when it does, it's a great thing. So, hopefully we'll get that opportunity next time. And it was really nice when you came back in at the end of the day. The folks were there waiting for you. They take the rods from you, wash them off for you, hang them up, the boat and that, so again, you're catered to very, very well. And they took really good care of you. And looking at the boat there, that main deck behind where the two gals are standing, that's where the cabins are. That next deck up is the lounge where there's chairs and seats in back, and then that goes into the dining area and kitchen, and that's all air conditioned. At least the dining area is. And up on top, there's a big open area with like deck chairs, and they actually had a hot tub up there too. So you had a lot of comforts for you, considering you were pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And one of the first things when you got back in was Tanya would make a batch of mojitos. So that was a good way to kind of unwind. Or, you grab a cold beer out of the cooler, or a water, or a sparkling water, cola, whatever. But again, to go hungry or thirsty, plenty of food and drink was certainly there for you. They're just kind of relaxing at the end of the day. And dinners were, I thought, excellent, considering the situation where we were at. Again, a couple main entrees with all kinds of different, mostly a lot of pickled vegetables and, fruits, and there was always soup and rice, and, so again, there was no excuse to go hungry. They usually had wine available at dinner if you wanted. And they actually knew it was John's birthday. So, from the information that you give them when you sign up and everything, and for all your documents, they knew it was his birthday, and they were kind enough to have a cake for him that evening. And, they didn't have to do that, but that was a very nice touch that they did. And this was a big surprise. I don't know, we were there maybe the second or third day after we were there. A couple of the guides went out after we got back in from fishing and came back with literally a couple tubfuls of lobster, spiny lobster. They were only gone, maybe an hour. So that gives you an idea of how many of them must be down there. Of course, these guys know what they're doing. They split a bunch up and grilled lobster tails, and then wow. I don't know, we had lobster as main course maybe 2 nights, and as part of dinner, or for lunch, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, I don't know. So a lot of fresh seafood available to take advantage of. And look at that, Mark's finally smiling after downing that plate of lobster there. So anyhow, no excuse to go hungry, for sure. And they even went out, and I guess they do this as a regular thing, but they made the offer to go out night fishing a couple times for tarpon. So right at dark, they would head out, and there's a couple open areas in the mangroves, next to deeper channels and that, where the fish had come out and just cruised once it got dark and looked for food, and you could hear them blowing up mullet and stuff on the surface. Sometimes you'd see the swirl, and it was amazing. I don't think I did it, I think 3 times, and I don't think I fished more than 15 or 20 minutes without hooking a fish. So, I mean, it was well worth going out, and was part of the, part of the regular program they did. And, that actually was taken in the dark with an iPhone camera. So, no flash either, I don't think, on that one. So I was kind of surprised that picture even came out. So, just fun to do and quite an interesting experience to catch one at night. And kind of, getting down towards the end of things here, whenever we were cruising around or, poling and that, if you saw a big patch of white sand like that, you always wanted to look at it. Because, you might see something like that. So hopefully you can see the school of bonefish there. And in those situations, if we were poling, we would get out and wade to the fish, because that's nice hard sand, very easy to wade on. And you can get amazingly close to them in a situation like that. And I was able to get a little sequence of photos here. I just, pulled a few of them out here just to kind of give you an idea here. So you can see the school of fish, and Christie's actually made the cast, and in the process of striking right at the moment there, the lead fish has hit the fly, and the fish is off and running. And most of the fish would take you into your backing a little ways. Those bigger fish, I mean, they'd go way down into the backing, maybe 2-3 times, before you get them in. And again, this is mostly 8-weight outfits that we're using for the bones, probably 10 to 12 pound leader, so it's not super light stuff. Again, these fish aren't really spooky at all. I mean, you still have to make a reasonable cast to them. But if you make a good presentation to fish in a situation like that, you're almost assured that, you're going to get one. And there's the end of the sequence there. Nice chunky little bone fish. And we, that school actually ended up going down around the corner there, behind Christie's shoulder. And we managed to catch a couple other ones about the same size before they finally spooked. So again, Avalon is the outfitter we went with. Here's contact information if anybody is interested. Scott Osborne is the representative in this area. He lives in Virginia, and this is some of the various places that Avalon runs trips to. The other ones are mainly, they may have one other mothership location. The other ones are land-based, and some are specialized more for, again, the one we were on is kind of the best one for a wide variety of fish and just totally getting away from things. But again, we had a very good experience with Avalon, and at this point we're scheduled to go back again. So here's information. The other thing too, this presentation will be up on YouTube in a couple days. We'll have it on our YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to go back and look at anything or anything like that, you'll be able to view it. You can also contact me anytime for information. And I want to say thanks to Mark and Mike for giving some photos to the program to supplement the. And here's my contact information. If anybody in information about these trips, anything at all about the Natural History Museum. Right now, the trip, at least the initial trip that we have set up for next year, it looks like everybody, pretty much everybody that went the first time is going again. And the other folks that did not opt to go the last time, but stayed in, kept their money in the mix and everything, and kept signed up. All of them, everybody there is signed up for the trip in January. So right now, I don't think there's an open spot in that group, but that does not preclude us from setting up another trip if there's enough people that want to go, or that does not stop you from setting up a trip on your own and getting in with one of their groups. I'm also willing to if anybody wants to be put on a waiting list in case for various reasons somebody has to drop out of the trip we have signed up, just feel free to contact me. And if you want costs or anything like that, feel free to contact me. Ultimately, the trips, depending on how many people you have, are ranging approximately, I'm going to say 4,000 to 4,500, all inclusive in that range there. Now that does not include airfare, so your airfare would be on top of that. And prices do go up once you get, especially in the spring, start showing up. So we're kind of at doing things in the lower price point of the year, but the value for the money spent on this trip was, I think, excellent based on costs that I'm seeing for other trips around the Caribbean at this point in time. So anyhow, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer stuff right now. If not, really appreciate you sitting in. If you want to contact me, again, all my info's there, and look forward to hearing from you. Look forward to seeing you hopefully at the Fly Fishing Film Tour or one of our functions in the future. We do have an Instagram page, CMNH Trout Club. Right now, we're not having a lot of, there are some problems with our web page with the museum. They're doing a lot of reconstruction and revamping things. So getting info up on the web page, in a timely manner is not working real well. Like everybody else, they're short on staff and that. So check our Instagram page to stay up and in tune on everything. So thanks again, and we'll see you along the way.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, guys. Any questions from anybody?
Jerry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, so I was hoping there might be an opportunity for me, so it doesn't look like it.
Right at this point, well, who am I talking to?
Jack Wallingford.
Oh, Jack, you're on. You're on.
Oh, I am. Okay, great. You're the best. Thanks.
Yeah, because we talked about that a long time ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, my other question is
Yeah.
this, is I don't have a 9-weight. Is that something that they have down there? Are they setting you up with the
No.
rods? So you got to bring your own rod?
No. Yeah, you got to bring your own gear, your own flies, and all that. And one thing I forgot to mention at the end there is the the average person down there has very, very little. So before
Okay.
we went down there, the outfitter asked us to, take some extra stuff down for the people, like in the way of even just stuff like aspirin, Band-Aids and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So, we took a lot of extra stuff down there, left extra stuff with them, and they're very, very appreciative of it. They do not have a lot of, they just don't have anything. There's no such thing as going to the corner drugstore and getting stuff. So,
Okay.
the average person has a pretty tough time of it.
Yeah,
All
that would be clothing, aspirin, toothpaste, deodorant, anything like that. They were looking for everything.
Yep.
Hey, Jerry, it's Scott Doster. Quick question on species. Did you guys get into any snook?
We did not get into any snook. Now, let's say we did not catch any snook. I don't know if anybody saw any or not. I did not hear mention of snook at all.
Okay. Interesting.
I know there are some down there. It might be a time of year thing. And Scott, I did not ask that question specifically either.
Any idea what the water temperature was?
Water temperature was, it kind of high 70s, maybe up into the 80s.
Okay.
We had a couple cool days in that, but when we first got there, it was cloudy, windy, a bit of a small cold front went through, and then towards the end of the week, it warmed up again. But it was in, the couple times I looked when we got on the boat, it looked like it was, high 70s and that.
Okay. That's right. That's kind of right on the bubble for snook. They
Okay. Yeah,
about
maybe
78 degrees and they start to feed again.
okay. So that might have had something to do with it.
Hey, Jerry, Robert Hans here.
Yes, sir.
How was the German fisherman? Was he any good?
Oh yeah, that guy, he was an animal, man. It was like his 20th trip to Cuba,
Oh my gosh.
and he had been up at another place for like 2 weeks, and then went down on our trip. So he's some kind of engineer in Hamburg, and
Ach du lieber. Oh,
decided to kind of, check this trip out since there was room on it. Yeah, he was a nice guy. He was a lot of fun.
cool. Well, hey, a more practical question. When you're tying these flies and all these guys, are they fishing all barbed hooks or barbless, or does it not matter?
I don't think anybody pinch barbs down.
Yeah.
They're regular, just barbed hooks.
Okay.
And they're pretty generic patterns. There was certainly nothing out of the ordinary, at least based on what I've seen other places. Even that Avalon fly, which was developed down there, there's guys that use that in Belize and Mexico and stuff too. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, so a lot, again, these fish are just not that, they're not educated the way like a Keys bonefish is or something like that.
Sure. All right. Thanks.
Yep.
It was probably more important to have flies that worked in heavy eelgrass areas, meaning unweighted flies, and weighted flies for deeper areas on hard bottom. Definitely helped to have a good selection of bonefish flies that worked in different depths and
Right.
conditions.
Good point, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, I also would add that the tippet selection and leader selection for bonefish as well as tarpon, and having a variety of 30-pound, 40-pound test stuff for tarpon, and 16-pound test for bonefish. And I was a little bit lacking in some of the tarpon stuff. Luckily, Mike Mach had some extras, and he kind of filled in the gaps, and as well as for some of the other people too. When I was down there before, we didn't do as much tarpon fishing, so it wasn't as adamant to have all of that. So that was kind of a good. There was more to have there than anything, and we didn't see a ton of permit, but if we would have, that would have held true for that. So that's kind of in between the bonefish and the tarpon. So having the right leaders of tippets and stuff for that would have been good. And also in terms of, I mentioned earlier, the guides were looking and to help any gear you had, any clothing you had, any medical stuff, but gear too. They lacked in all of that. Sunglasses, anything you could give, fly lines, anything like that, anything you could bring extra, they really appreciated. So
just basic things like pliers they didn't have, and
Dippers. Yeah.
yeah, nippers,
They-
pliers,
Yep.
any of that stuff.
Another thing, for the guys that are signed up for next year that didn't go, you don't have to take a ton of clothes with you because they do laundry every day if you want. I mean,
Yep.
You just leave the stuff on the floor in your room, and when you come back in the evening, it'll be washed and folded and, laying on your bed. So, you don't have to take necessarily a week's worth of, regular clothing with you. You can get by with just a couple outfits and just, wash them every other day or something like that.
yeah, I would say you could get by with 2 full sets of clothing if you really wanted to bare minimum it. You could wear one for a day or 2, and then they could be washing the other ones. But there was some mix up with clothing, but we usually figured out who got whose clothing back, and it was pretty good.
Yeah. They overall, again, they did a good job. I think
They did a great job. And there was always something to eat. I'm allergic to fish, so I couldn't eat fish, but I didn't go hungry at all. So
all right, anything else?
I think you were mentioning equipment, and as far as basic fly rods, the 8 weights are fine for the bonefish. Some other species, a 10 weight for the tarpon and permit. And myself personally, I also take a travel 3-piece medium heavy spinning rod and have a lot of fun catching fish down there on surface baits. In particular, the Cuba snapper are brutally aggressive predators, and Jack Crevalles as well. Big, large surface baits are just a blast on a spinning rod. They're out of your reach with the fly rod, and it's nice to mix up fly rod stuff and spinning gear as well.
How about barracudas, Jerry?
Yes.
Yeah, there's cudas down there for sure. I did, we saw a couple, did not fish for them. I think a couple of the guys caught some, didn't you?
Yeah, I caught Christ, well over a half a dozen barracuda, probably closer to a dozen.
Okay.
Most of them I was catching on surface baits on the spinning rod.
Cool.
And I only fished with the spinning rod maybe at best 10% of the time.
Yeah. So I don't think that's a species they really target. But certainly they're there if you want to go after them, as Mike can attest to. And anybody that's actually signed up, we'll do another meeting or 2 beforehand, to go over stuff and just make sure everybody's dialed in on what they need to take. If somebody wants to see some fly tying, I know some of you guys are a long ways away. We could even set up, a presentation like this and look at some flies if you want to tie some. But snapping shrimp is kind of one of the main ones to start with. But gotchas, a lot of the standard stuff, and everybody kind of has their own take on those and the way they tweak them and that. But all that stuff catches fish. I mean, it certainly worked well for us. And even the folks I know that were there a month ago, I mean, they also had great, kind of a very similar experience. Most of their group just focused on bonefish, and they caught a ton of them. But if you wanted to, go after the other stuff, it was certainly there. And it sounded like their tarpon fishing was, comparable to ours, and they managed to get, a few permit during the week too. So, so that again, we're kind of be in that little later time frame, but it sounds like, the fishing will be pretty much the same. All right, we all good for now?
Yeah, thanks,
All right.
Jerry.
Yeah, that
All
was
right, so
great,
Mike,
Jerry.
thanks everybody
Thanks.
for
Thanks a lot.
sitting in, and talk to everybody soon. Again, if anybody has any particular questions, get a hold of me. Otherwise, we'll be, slowly putting this whole thing together as we move forward here. Okay? Take care, be safe. Talk to you soon.
All right.